Sometimes the best place to hide from trouble comes from someone you'd never expect. Back in the winter of 1882, a schoolteacher named Clara Whitmore got stuck in a snowy mountain storm with nowhere to go. That's when Gideon Lawson showed up, a huge cowboy, super tall at 6'8", who talked like he could tame wild horses and even wilder land. His cabin was cozy, his offer was surprising, and his words stuck with her. "Share my bed tonight and I'll build you a ranch tomorrow." Clara had two choices: freeze in the storm or trust this giant guy with her life. She picked staying warm. What happened next would challenge everything she thought about love, staying alive, and getting another shot at life. But when spring came and the snow melted, would a fancy teacher from the East really stay with a rugged cowboy who promised her everything? Before we go on, tell us where you're listening from. And if this story grabs you, hit subscribe, 'cause I've got something really cool saved for tomorrow. Clara Whitmore never thought her trip west would land her in a stranger's cabin, holding tight to her old leather teaching bag like it was her only friend. That bag had everything left from her old life: a few favorite books, her mom's letters, lesson plans she wrote with big dreams back in Philadelphia, and a silver pen her students gave her as a goodbye gift. Now they felt like things from a totally different world. The cabin wasn't what she expected. She thought it'd be messy, like the rough stories she heard from women who went to the wildlands. But Gideon's place showed he cared. The floor was clean. The small windows shone in the firelight. Handmade furniture had careful details, and the stone fireplace worked perfectly. Everything was neat, from the stack of firewood by the hearth to a row of real books on a shelf he built into the wall. "You read?" Clara asked, surprised, as she looked at the book titles. Cooper, Irving, even Shakespeare's poems, their pages worn from being read a lot. Gideon moved around the cabin easily for such a big guy, adding wood to the fire and putting a kettle on. "Some," he said, his voice deep like it could cut through the storm. "Winter nights are long here. A guy needs something to keep the quiet away." She watched him, noticing how his big hands did gentle things, like fixing the fire, measuring tea, folding a blanket perfectly. Everything about him was different from what she expected. Cowboys were supposed to be rough and rowdy, into drinking and fighting. This guy moved like someone who lived alone, but stayed decent. "You been here long?" Clara asked, sitting in the chair he pointed to. It had a soft cushion made of deer hide, stitched neatly. 3 years, Gideon said, pouring hot water into 2 tin cups. "Built this place myself, every board, every stone." He handed her a cup, their fingers touching for a second. His hands were rough but warm. Decided it was time to stop roaming and build something that lasts. The tea was good, better than she thought it'd be. Real tea, not the bad stuff she got used to on her travels. Clara held the cup, letting it warm her hands, studying this guy who came out of the storm like a fairy tale hero. "What made you a teacher?" Gideon asked, sitting in a big chair made for his size. "My dad," Clara said, surprised she wanted to share. "He thought teaching could make the world better, one kid at a time. When he died, I wanted to keep his work going." She paused, remembering. "My mom thought it was silly for a woman to travel alone to teach in far-off schools. She wanted me to marry Mr. Henderson, a guy who owns a cloth factory back home. But you came anyway. I came anyway." Clara looked into his eyes, seeing they were sharp and smart, though I'm starting to wonder if Mom was right about the silly part. Gideon stayed quiet for a bit, thinking about her words. Behind him, Clara saw a small wooden cross on the shelf, simple but smooth from being held a lot. It sat by his books like a sign of faith he kept quietly. "Teaching's important," he said finally. "Kids here don't get much learning unless someone like you shows up. Takes guts to leave everything you know and head into the unknown. Or maybe it's dumb," Clara said with a little laugh. "I'm not sure which." "Guts," Gideon said firmly. "Dumb folks don't make it as far as you did before hitting trouble." Outside, the wind screamed louder, shaking the windows and sending snow down the chimney to sizzle in the fire. Clara shivered, remembering the freezing cold that almost got her before Gideon found her. "The bed," she said quietly, her face getting warm despite how serious things were. "Your offer was just about staying alive, right?" Gideon's voice was kind but straight. Up here, cold kills fast. I've got enough blankets for us both, and the fire will burn all night, but sharing warmth is what keeps you alive till morning. Clara nodded, getting the need, even if her proper upbringing didn't like it. And the ranch? You meant that too? Gideon's face got serious, almost soft. I've got almost 2,000 acres of great grazing land. Good water, natural windbreaks, timber for building. Been working it alone. He paused, picking his words. A place like this is meant to be shared, meant for a family. You don't even know me, Clara said softly. Know enough, Gideon said, looking at her steadily. Know you're brave to come west alone. Know you care about teaching kids. Know you've got enough grit to trust a stranger in a storm instead of giving up. You value books, like me. That's more than most folks know about each other when they get married. The word married hung between them, bold and crazy, but somehow right. Clara felt something warm inside her, not from the fire or tea. I should tell you, she said, I'm not great at frontier life. I can only cook simple stuff. I've never gardened, and I know nothing about ranching. Can you learn? I can learn. Then we'll figure it out as we go. Gideon stood, heading to a chest by his bed. I've got extra blankets. We can hang a rope for privacy so you can change. Morning will show us what the weather brings. As Clara got ready to sleep in this strange new place, she thought not about how improper it was, but about how gentle this giant man was who saved her life. Outside, the storm roared, but inside the cabin she felt safer than she had in months of traveling. Gideon lay on his side of the big bed, keeping a respectful distance, even as they shared warmth to survive the cold mountain night. Clara stayed stiff at first, super aware of him, but slowly her exhaustion took over. Just before she fell asleep, she heard him whisper in the dark, Clara, welcome home. A week passed in the cabin, and Clara started to see her stay as more than just hiding from the storm. The snow was so deep it reached the windows, and she began to see Gideon as more than her rescuer. He was the most interesting guy she'd ever met. Every morning, Gideon got up before dawn to check on his animals, coming back with fresh milk and eggs, even in the tough weather. He cooked breakfast with skill, never making her feel useless, but clearly happy to take care of her. Their morning coffee talks became her favorite part of the day, chatting about books they both loved or dreams they never told anyone else. Tell me about your land, Clara said on the 7th morning, watching him fix a leather harness with the same care he gave everything. Gideon's eyes lit up. Come spring, when the snow's gone, you'll see grass so green it's almost too bright. There's a creek that never dries up, even in bad summers. Trees on the North Hill good for building and firewood. And the view, he paused, almost shy about how excited he was. It sounds silly, but there's a spot on the ridge where you can see forever. Makes you feel part of something big. Clara could picture it, this place he loved so much. How'd you get so much land? Bought it fair from a guy who couldn't make it work, Gideon said. It takes more than just wanting to do well out here. You gotta understand the land, respect what it gives and what it doesn't. He finished a tricky stitch and checked his work. Takes staying power, too. Most folks want quick results. The land teaches you to wait, or it breaks you. That afternoon, Clara found something that changed everything. While Gideon was outside chopping wood, she decided to tidy her teaching bag, which got messy when she arrived. As she folded her mom's letters, her fingers found a small velvet pouch in the bag's deepest pocket. Her mom's wedding ring. She pulled it out slowly, the gold band shining in the firelight. She'd carried it for 3 years since her mom died, unable to wear it but not wanting to leave it behind. It stood for everything she'd lost, her safe life in Philadelphia, her parents' loving marriage, the normal future she'd been expected to have. Something's bothering you, Gideon said when he came back, brushing snow off his boots. His ability to notice surprised her. Clara held up the ring, letting it shine. My mom's wedding ring. She wore it for 32 years. Only took it off to clean it. She turned it slowly, remembering. She said marriage was like a garden. You work on it every day, wait patiently, and believe it'll grow into something beautiful. Gideon hung, his coat, and sat across from her, his face serious. She sounds wise. She was. She'd have been shocked by me being here, an unmarried woman living with a guy I've known for a week. In her world, that'd ruin me. And in your world, Clara thought for a moment. I think my world's changing more than I realized. The teaching job you were going to, Gideon said carefully. You could still get there when the road's clear, maybe lose just a month of school. His words felt like a test. Clara realized he was giving her a way back to her original plan. The kind thing, the proper thing, would be to take it. Is that what you think I should do? She asked. I think you should do what makes you happy, Gideon said. But I'd be lying if I said I wanted you to go. Clara stood and looked out the window at the endless snow. Out there was the town expecting her, the school she was supposed to run, the proper life she'd planned. Behind her was a man offering something totally different, unsure, unusual, but more real than anything she'd ever been offered. What would marrying you be like? She asked, not turning around. She heard him shift in his chair. Honest, he said after a pause. I'm not a guy who pretends. What you see is what you get, good and bad. I work hard, keep my word, and I'd never hurt you. But I'm rough, Clara. I don't know fancy manners or how to talk to fancy people. Clara turned to face him. What about kids? Want them? Gideon said simply. Wanted them more since I thought about having them with you. His honesty made her heart feel tight. And my teaching? Kids here need school bad. We could build a real schoolhouse. Get the neighbors to help. You'd have students, just not the ones you planned. Clara looked at the ring in her hand, its weight both comforting and heavy. Her mom wore it as a sign of a love that grew slowly over years of shared challenges. Clara always thought she'd find something similar, safe, predictable, acceptable. But Gideon offered something else, not safety, but adventure. Not predictability, but possibility. Not approval, but a chance to build something her own. If I stayed, she said carefully, if I chose this life with you, there's no going back. No returning to Philadelphia if it gets hard. No falling. Back to a proper life if the frontier's too tough. No going back, Gideon agreed. But Clara, building something worth having always means letting go of the past. The question is, are you ready to look forward? That night, Clara lay awake, listening to Gideon's quiet breathing, turning the ring in her fingers. The wind outside sounded different. Not scary, but like change coming. Needed and sure. By morning, she decided. Gideon, she said at breakfast, about that ranch you promised. He looked up from his coffee, hope and worry in his face. Clara slipped her mom's ring onto her right hand, where it caught the morning light. I want to see those plans. Spring came like a woman who'd made up her mind. Clara watched. From the cabin door, as Gideon checked the land with the focus of a leader planning a big move, his dad's hammer hung from his belt like a badge. The tool was old, smooth from years of use, its handle shaped by generations of skilled hands. My grandpa used this hammer to build his first house in Ohio, Gideon told her the night before, touching its grooves. My dad used it for our family home and barns for half the county. Now it'll help us build something that'll last forever. The snow had melted enough to show Gideon's huge land. Clara was amazed by the rolling fields, broken by trees and a shiny creek. The cabin sat on a small hill, perfect to see the valley but safe from bad weather. The house will go there, Gideon said, pointing to a flat spot near the creek, close enough for water but high enough to stay dry in spring. We'll face it to catch morning sun but stay cool in the afternoon. Clara could imagine it. A real house with big windows, maybe a porch to watch the seasons change. How long to build if you're alone? 2 years, maybe, Gideon said, but I hope I won't be alone. That afternoon, their first visitors came, Samuel Hartwell, a tough-looking guy, and his teenage son, Danny. They lived 10 miles east and came to check on Gideon as soon as the trails cleared. Heard you got company, Gideon, Samuel said, tipping his hat to Clara. His eyes were curious but kind, used to the frontier's relaxed rules. Clara Whitmore, Gideon said, sounding proud, making Clara's heart skip. She's gonna be my wife and teach school for the Valley kids. Danny, a tall 16-year-old, got excited. School? Real school? With books and writing? Everything, Clara said, liking his enthusiasm. How long since you had real lessons? Never had real ones, Danny admitted. Ma taught me letters and numbers, but she died too, Des. Years ago. Been trying to learn alone, but it's hard. Clara felt that spark she got when meeting a kid eager to learn. What do you want to learn most? Reading, Danny said right away. I can figure out words okay, but I want to read real books like Ma talked about. And writing, letters that don't look messy. We'll start with reading, Clara promised. I've got books perfect for you. Samuel watched, interested. 8 families live in this valley, Miss Whitmore, with about 20 kids. Most never had a real teacher. You'd have eager students and we'd help build the schoolhouse, he added. Nothing brings folks together like raising a barn, especially for a school. Over the next weeks, Clara learned Gideon wasn't joking about community help. As word spread that he was building a real home and marrying a teacher, families came with offers to help and curiosity about the woman who caught the valley's best bachelor. Clara found out Gideon was well-liked, a guy who kept his word, helped neighbors, and didn't start fights, but could end them if needed. The women were cautious at first, unsure about a city lady marrying a guy she just met, but Clara's warmth and love for teaching their kids won them over. You're not what I expected, said Margaret Hartwell, Samuel's wife, as they made a community dinner together. When Samuel said Gideon found a city woman, I thought she'd complain about the rough life. The rough life's growing. On me, Clara said honestly, kneading dough better each time. There's something nice about work you can see right away. But it wasn't all smooth. The first big test came in the second week of building when Clara suggested changes to Gideon's house plans. The kitchen should be bigger, she said, looking at his drawings. And we need storage for books and school stuff, plus shelves in the front room. Clara, Gideon said, sounding patient but firm, I've planned this house for 3 years. Every measurement, every beam, every window is thought out. We can't change it now. But a bigger kitchen makes sense, Clara pushed. If I'm cooking for work crews and hosting folks, we'll need space. The kitchen's big enough, Gideon said. Bigger, and it'll be hard to heat in winter. They stared at each other across the foundation stakes, their first real argument sparking like a storm. Clara felt her city ways rising. Back home, her ideas about the house would have been expected. Here, Gideon's experience seemed to matter more. Fine, she said coldly. It's your house. Our house, Gideon corrected, softening. Clara, I'm not ignoring your ideas, but I know this land and weather. Trust me. That evening, they worked quietly until Danny Hartwell came with a question about a book Clara gave him. Watching her teach the boy, Gideon realized something. You're right about the kitchen, he said after Danny left. And the book storage. I was thinking like a single guy, not a family man. Clara looked up from her lesson plan. And I was thinking like someone who's never heated a house with a wood stove. Maybe we both need to give a little. Maybe we do, Gideon agreed, pulling out his dad's hammer to sketch new plans in the dirt. Show me what you're thinking. Clara's copy of Pride and Prejudice had survived 3 years of travel, many readings, and now helped connect 2 different worlds. Its leather cover was soft, the pages marked with dried flowers from her mom's garden and her own neat notes. It was perfect for showing Gideon that books were more than just fun. I don't get it, Gideon said one warm May evening, holding the book like it might snap at him. All this talk about dancing and money and who's got what. People have real problems. That's why it matters, Clara said, sitting beside him on the steps of their half-built house. The walls were up, the roof almost done, but they still lived in the cabin while work went on. Elizabeth Bennet has real problems. She's trying to find her place in a world that only values women for marriage and connections. Sound familiar? Gideon glanced at her. You comparing yourself to a book character? I'm comparing every woman who's had to pick between safety and happiness, Clara said. Elizabeth could have married Mr. Collins and been comfortable but miserable, or she could wait for something real even if it was risky. Like I could have married Mr. Henderson back home or waited for something better, like a giant cowboy in a snowstorm. Gideon's mouth twitched in a smile she loved. Like a giant cowboy who builds houses and reads Shakespeare, Clara teased. Though you're still struggling with Jane Austen. Gideon opened the book and read aloud, his deep voice making Elizabeth's sharp words sound serious. I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine. He paused. She's got guts. I'll give her that. Keep reading, Clara urged. As spring turned to summer, their evening reading became as regular as morning coffee. Clara learned Gideon's reading issues weren't about smarts. His understanding was great once he got through the words. His education had been about survival, not fancy books. Teaching him became another way to build their life together. The community barn raising for their house brought everyone in the valley together, and Clara got a taste of how frontier folks judged newcomers. Most women welcomed her, excited for another educated voice in their lonely valley. But Martha Kelman, a neighbor's wife, wasn't impressed. Pretty quick courtship, Martha said loudly while they made lunch for the work crew. In my day, proper folks took time to get to know each other before big decisions. In your day, Mrs. Kelman, Clara said calmly, slicing ham, blizzards didn't. Make choices for you. Sometimes life shows you what your heart already knows. Circumstances, Martha huffed. Fancy word for it. Clara felt annoyed but stayed calm. She was still the new girl proving herself. Before she could reply, Margaret Hartwell spoke up. Martha, you married your husband after 6 weeks, during planting season with plenty of time to think. Clara and Gideon faced life and death. That tells you more about someone than months of polite dinners. The other women nodded, and Martha looked embarrassed. But Clara knew she wasn't fully accepted yet. She'd need to prove herself as more than Gideon's choice. That afternoon, she got her chance. Danny Hartwell came to her during a break, holding a worn copy of Robinson Crusoe. Miss Clara, I've been reading like you said, but some words are tricky, he said. Clara sat with him on a pile of wood, and soon they were deep in talk. About Crusoe's smarts and how surviving on an island was like living on the frontier. Other kids joined, drawn by the lively chat, and soon Clara was teaching an unplanned lesson to 8 kids, ages 6 to 16. That's how you build a shelter with no tools, said 10-year-old Sarah Mitchell, linking Crusoe's methods to her dad's work. You use what's there and make it strong like Mr. Gideon's house. Exactly, Clara said, thrilled by their eager faces. Crusoe succeeds because he works with his surroundings, not against them. What other examples can you think of from your lives? The talk went on for nearly an hour, covering books, practical skills, and big ideas about building new lives in tough places. Clara noticed the adults had gone quiet, listening to their kids think in ways they'd never seen. When the lesson ended and the kids ran off, Samuel Hartwell came over, thoughtful. That was amazing, he said. Danny's been struggling with that book for months, giving up. 20 minutes with you, and he's talking about themes like a college kid. He's smart, Clara said. They all are. They just need someone to show them how to think about what they read, not just read the words. This valley needs that, Samuel said seriously. We've raised kids who can work hard and survive, but not kids who can dream and build something better. You're going to change that. That evening, as Clara and Gideon read together on their porch, she felt like she belonged. The community had tested her and found her worthy. More importantly, she saw how her skills and Gideon's could create something bigger together. You know what I like about Elizabeth Bennet? Gideon said, closing the book. She doesn't let anyone tell her what she's worth. Not her mom, not society, not even Darcy, until he gets her value. He looked at Clara. Reminds me of someone. Clara smiled, her mom's ring catching the sunset. Keep reading, Cowboy. You haven't hit the best part yet. Clara first noticed Gideon's nightmares on a July evening when thunder roared, like cannons. She woke to find him stiff beside her, breathing fast, sweating despite the cool air. In his sleep, he mumbled words she couldn't catch, bits of orders and pleas about tough choices. Gideon, she whispered, touching his shoulder. Wake up! He snapped awake, alert like someone who had to stay sharp to survive. For a moment, his eyes didn't know her, stuck on some far-off fight only he could see. Then he saw her, and he relaxed. Sorry, he said roughly, sitting up and rubbing his hair. Did I wake you? The storm did, Clara lied gently. You okay? Fine, Gideon said, but she could tell he wasn't. Just dreams. They'll go away. But they didn't. Over the next weeks, Clara noticed signs. He jumped at loud noises, always checked exits and paths when they were in town, and sometimes looked haunted when he thought no one saw. Something had happened before he came to the valley, something that left deep scars. The answer came by accident one hot July afternoon. Clara was organizing their stuff in the new house, finally livable, when she knocked over a wooden box under Gideon's side of the bed. Papers and a shiny thing spilled out, a military medal, old but clear. The ribbon was faded blue and gray, with words saying, "For bravery in action, Private First Class Gideon Lawson, 2nd Pennsylvania Infantry." Clara understood. The nightmares, the alertness, the battles he still fought in his mind. Gideon was a Civil War veteran. "You weren't supposed to see that," Gideon said from the doorway, his voice flat. Clara turned, holding the medal. "How long did you fight?" 4 years, Bull Run to Appomattox. His jaw was tight, eyes looking past her. "Lost a lot of good men. Should have been one of them, probably. But you weren't," Clara said simply. "You survived. You came home." "Did I?" His question was raw. "Sometimes I'm not sure what's real. This life with you or the war where I'm still fighting, watching friends die." Clara set the medal on the dresser and went to him. Up close, she saw the pain in his eyes, lines from sleepless nights and heavy memories. "Tell me what happened," she said. For a long moment, he was quiet. Then he started talking. He was 19 when he joined, full of big ideas about glory. War crushed those fast. "Antietam was the worst," he said softly. 17,000, dead in one day. I was in the cornfield when the Confederate line broke. Should have been a win, but all I saw were boys from Pennsylvania and Virginia bleeding into the dirt." Clara listened as he told of friends lost to disease and bullets, tough choices war forced, and guilt for surviving when others didn't. He got a medal for bravery at Gettysburg, holding a spot against all odds, but it felt like a joke now. "I came west to escape," Gideon said. "Thought if I built something good, I could make up for—" He stopped. "Make up for surviving?" Clara asked gently. Gideon nodded, eyes wet. "Why me, Clara? Why do I get happiness when they'll never see another sunset?" Clara thought hard. This wasn't a question for easy answers. "I think," she said, "the men who died would want their sacrifice to mean something. They'd want a better world, not a sadder one. By building a life here, a community, raising kids who will never know that war, you're honoring them the best way you can." "Some nights I still hear them," Gideon admitted. "My sergeant, Bobby Morrison, talked about the farm he'd buy, the kids he'd have. Got shot at Fredericksburg, calling for his mom." He paused. "How do I build the life he never got without feeling like I stole it?" "You build it big enough to include his memory," Clara said. "Name a field after him. Teach his story to our kids so they know the cost of peace. You don't honor the dead by refusing to live. You honor them by living well." That night, Gideon slept through a thunderstorm for the first time. Their talk opened a deeper bond, but it would be tested soon. 2 days later, a stranger arrived, a fancy man in his 50s with soft hands and sharp eyes. He called himself Harrison Blackwood, from Philadelphia, bringing news that could break Clara's peace. "Miss Whitmore," he said, taking off his hat politely. "I've traveled far to find you. Folks back home are worried about you." "Folks?" Clara asked, though she guessed who. "Mr. Henderson, among others. He's offering to pay for your trip back to Philadelphia for a proper wedding and a respectable life." He looked at their half-built home with dislike. "Surely this rough life isn't for a woman like you." Clara felt Gideon tense and touched his arm. "Mr. Blackwood, thank you, but I've chosen my life. I'm happy here." "Are you?" Blackwood's smile was cold. "Living with a man whose past is questionable?" "Yes, Miss Whitmore, I know about his military service and what he did in the war." "Mr. Blackwood," Clara said, her voice low and firm, "please leave. Not until you hear Mr. Henderson's offer." He pushed. "A fine house in Philadelphia. Servants, social status, security. Everything but love," Clara cut in. "No, thank you." As Blackwood left, his last words echoed. "This isn't over, Miss Whitmore. A woman like you doesn't belong here, and some will go far to make you see sense. 3 weeks later, a bronze school bell arrived on a wagon, shining in the August sun like a promise. Clara watched from their finished house as Gideon guided the delivery men with care. "Where'd you get this?" Clara asked, touching the bell's smooth surface, finer than she expected in their remote valley. "Denver," Gideon said, happy with her excitement. "Had it specially made. The words were my idea." Clara saw the inscription, "Lawson Valley School, Clara's Bell, where learning lights the way home." Her throat tightened. "Gideon," she whispered, "figured you needed a real bell to call the kids to school," he said, looking unsure. "Too much?" Instead of answering, Clara kissed him, pouring in all her gratitude and love. Neighbors gathered to see the bell, including Danny Hartwell and his sister, Emma. "Does this mean school's starting?" Emma asked, eyes wide. "September 1st, Clara said. "This bell will ring at 8 sharp to call you to lessons." "Even in rain?" Danny asked. "Even in rain," Clara promised. "Rain doesn't stop learning." That evening, on their porch watching the sunset, Gideon gave Clara another surprise, a small velvet box handed over nervously. "We've talked about this a lot," he said, his voice formal, "but it's time to make it official." Inside was a ring, not a fancy diamond, but gold from their creek with a sapphire that glowed like starlight. "Found the stone in the mountains last spring," Gideon said. "Had it cut in Denver with your bell, blue as our valley sky on a perfect day." Clara stared, overwhelmed by the thought behind it. This wasn't just a proposal, it was a sign their love belonged here, as lasting as the mountains. "Clara Whitmore," Gideon said, kneeling. "Will you marry me? Be my wife, the mother of my kids, my partner in building something forever?" "Yes," Clara said, tears close but her voice steady. "Yes, I'll marry you, Gideon Lawson. I'll be your wife, your partner, whatever this life needs." The ring fit perfectly, made for her hand. Gideon had planned this for months, crafting a symbol of their shared life. Word of their engagement spread fast, and neighbors started helping plan the wedding. Margaret Hartwell led the women, while Samuel and the men planned a big celebration for Gideon settling down. "October wedding," Margaret suggested as the women planned in Clara's kitchen. "After harvest, before the weather turns." "October's perfect," Clara agreed, though she worried about Blackwood's threats. Her fears came true sooner than expected. 3 days after the engagement, Clara saw dust rising on the eastern trail, too much for one rider. 5 men approached, well-armed, moving with purpose. "Clara!" Gideon called from the barn, his voice warning. He'd seen them too. The leader was Harrison Blackwood, but his men were tough, dangerous types, not like the soft city man from before. "Miss Whitmore," Blackwood called, getting off his horse, "I've brought friends to help you see reason." "She gave you her answer," Gideon said, walking from the barn, wearing his gun belt, rare around the house. "She's been alone too long from proper society," Blackwood said smoothly. "Mr. Henderson's offering $5,000 for her return. To Philadelphia, plus wedding and house costs." "$5,000? One of his men whistled. "I'd marry her myself for that." "The lady's taken," Gideon said, his voice quiet but dangerous. "By a washed-up soldier playing rancher," a thin man with cold eyes said. "We checked you out, Lawson. Gideon Big Jake Lawson, war hero from Gettysburg. Impressive. But that was long ago, and you're outnumbered." Clara saw Gideon's face harden, like the man from his nightmares. But more dust rose from the west. Samuel Hartwell and 3 other ranchers with their sons arrived. The odds shifted. More importantly, Clara saw Gideon's reputation in the valley went beyond being a good neighbor. These men trusted him enough to fight for him. "Gentlemen," Samuel said calmly, "you took a wrong turn. This is private land, and Clara's made her choice." Blackwood looked at the ranchers, rethinking his plan. "This is between me and Miss Whitmore. You have no say." "Wrong," said Margaret Hartwell, arriving with 3 armed women who knew how to shoot. "Clara's my neighbor and friend. That gives me plenty of say." Blackwood looked unsure. He hadn't expected a whole community to stand up for Clara. $5,000. He tried again, weaker. "Think what that could buy. Security, comfort, respectability." "I have security," Clara said, looking at her community. I have comfort in work that matters and real love. As for respectability, she held up her sapphire ring, I'm engaged to the best man I know. I don't need Henderson's money or empty promises. Blackwood's face turned mean. This isn't over, Miss Whitmore. Your family back east has rights. My family's here, Clara said firmly. These are my people now. As Blackwood and his men rode off, Gideon's arms settled around her. The fight was over for now, but Clara knew it wasn't the end. Think they'll come back? Samuel asked. Count on it, Gideon said. Men like that don't quit. When money's involved. That night, in bed, Clara thought about the school bell waiting to call kids to learning. Tomorrow, she'd start teaching, the reason she came west. But now it felt bigger. Not just teaching kids, but building a community strong enough to protect what mattered. Gideon, she said softly, promise me something. When they come back, and we know they will, promise you won't let them. Take me from this, from you, from our life, from the kids who need me. Gideon's arms tightened. Clara, I promise no one will take you while I'm alive. This is our home, our life, our choice. Anyone who tries will deal with me first. Outside, the school bell gleamed in the moonlight, ready to call the valley to its future. Clara found the wanted poster by accident, tucked in one of Gideon's old books like a forgotten secret. The paper was old, the ink faded, but it chilled her. Wanted, dead or alive. Gideon Big Jake Lawson, Blackage Gang. Reward, $2,000. For bank robbery, cattle stealing, murder. Last seen, Wyoming, 1875. The sketch was rough but clearly Gideon. Same strong jaw, intense eyes, but harder, meaner than the man she loved. Clara stared until the words blurred, her hands shaking as the truth hit her. Had everything he said about building a new life, leaving his past, been a lie? Was the kind man who read poetry and made school bells just a trick? Clara. Gideon's voice came from the doorway, stopping when he saw the poster. Where'd you find that? In your Whitman book, Clara said, her voice strange to her own ears. I was looking for something to read to the kids tomorrow. Gideon stood still like he was figuring out what to say. That he was still hiding things made her angry. How much of what you told me was true? She asked, standing to face him. The war? The medal? All of it, Gideon said quietly. Every word about the war was true, but not the part about being an outlaw after. Gideon closed his eyes, and when he opened them, Clara saw deep pain. No, I didn't. Tell you that. Were you going to before we married? Before I tied my life to a man bounty hunters might come for? Or were you going to let me find out when bullets started flying? Clara, don't. Clara held up her sapphire ring. Don't say you were protecting me or that you'd tell me later. Just tell me the truth, all of it. Gideon sat, looking, older than his 40 years. After the war, I had nothing. Farm gone, family dead. No one wanted to hire a soldier who'd killed for 4 years. I drifted west, took what work I could, but good jobs were hard for a guy with no connections and rough edges. Clara listened, her anger mixing with love despite everything. I joined Jake Blackage's gang in '74. They weren't the worst, mostly stealing cattle and small bank jobs. I told myself it was temporary just to get money to start over clean. His voice was flat. But easy money makes excuses. Before I knew it, I'd been with them over a year. The murder charge? A bank job in Laramie went bad. A guard pulled his gun and Jake shot him dead. I didn't kill him, Clara, but I was there. To the law, I'm just as guilty. Clara tried to match the man she knew with the criminal he described. How'd you get out? Took my share from the Laramie job and left one night while they were drunk. Changed my name from Jake to Gideon, close enough to feel natural, but different enough to avoid notice. Came here, bought this land with stolen money, spent 8 years trying to make something good to wash away the past. His honesty was hard, and Clara almost wished he'd kept lying. At least then she could pretend her life was stable, not built on shaky ground. Do the neighbors know? Samuel suspects something. Never asked, but he's made it clear my past doesn't matter as long as I'm a good neighbor now. Gideon leaned forward, urgent. Clara, everything I am to you, everything we've built, it's real. It's who I am now. Is it? Clara paced to the window, staring at the valley. Or are you still pretending? I'm who I choose to be, Gideon said firmly. Like you chose to be a frontier teacher, not a Philadelphia wife. We're both different now. Before. Clara could reply. Horses approached, not the slow pace of neighbors, but the fast ride of trouble. How many knew about that poster? Clara asked, fear replacing anger. No one, I thought. I destroyed... Gideon paled. Jake Blackidge. If he's alive, running the gang, he'd have copies of our wanted posters. And if someone's been asking about my past... The riders were close now. 5 tough men, led by one of Blackwood's crew. They've found me, Gideon said, grabbing his gun belt. Blackwood must have hired bounty hunters to dig into my past. What does this mean? Clara asked, dreading the answer. It means our life's under attack from people who won't just take you away, Gideon said grimly. Jake Blackidge and his gang are likely coming to settle old scores. Through the window, Clara saw the riders stop at the property's edge, studying the house and barn like professionals. One held a spyglass, checking their defenses. What do we do? Clara asked. Gideon was already moving, checking weapons, gathering bullets. We get ready for a fight. He turned to her, serious. Clara, you need to decide now. Stay and fight with the man I am, or leave with the bounty hunters to escape the man I was. Clara looked at the poster, then at Gideon. His past was ugly, full of bad choices that hurt people, but the man before her had spent 8 years making up for it, building a life and community that made things better. She threw the poster into the fire. I'm staying, she said. But when this is over, we're talking about honesty, trust, and what it means to build a life together. Outside, the riders moved closer, and more dust clouds appeared from different directions. Whatever was coming was bigger than bounty hunters after reward money. The real test of their love and community was about to start. Gideon's twin Colt. 45s sat on the kitchen table like dangerous promises, shining faintly in the lamplight. Clara had never seen him with both guns before. Usually he wore one for animals or rare troublemakers. These matched revolvers meant serious trouble. You need to know something, Clara, Gideon said, cleaning and loading each gun carefully. Jake Blackidge isn't like Blackwood's men. He's not after money or to scare you off. He's settling a score that's been burning for 8 years. What score? Clara asked, unsure if she wanted the answer. When I left the gang, I took more than my share of the Laramie job. I took info, names of helpers, hideout locations, planned jobs. His hands moved. With skill. I never used it, never gave it to the law, but Jake doesn't know that. To him, I'm a traitor who could ruin his gang any time. Clara felt the weight of his words. So this isn't just about catching a wanted man for money. No, it's about stopping a threat and making an example to keep others from leaving. Gideon holstered the guns, the leather worn smooth. Jake's not planning to take me alive. Probably not you either, or anyone in his way. Before Clara could reply, horses approached. Not trouble, but Samuel Hartwell and 3 other ranchers armed and serious. Gideon, Samuel called, we need to talk. Around their kitchen table, Clara saw something amazing. Without being asked, the Valley men had made Gideon's fight theirs. We're not dumb, Samuel said, sketching defense plans. We knew you had a past that might catch up. A man doesn't live alone in the mountains without reason. But we know who you are to this valley, and that's worth fighting for. This could get bad, Gideon warned. Jake's gang might be. 15 or 20 men, all killers. Then we'll be smarter, said Tom Mitchell, a southern rancher. They'll expect you to run or hide in the house. What if we don't do what they expect? Over hours, Clara watched the ranchers plan a defense like army leaders. They'd learned from Indian wars, cattle thieves, and claim jumpers, quietly, preparing for a big threat. Margaret Hartwell arrived with other women, bringing food, medical supplies, and determination. The kids are safe at the Morrison place, Margaret told Clara. Emma's watching the little ones, and the older boys are with the animals. No one's leaving till this is settled. Margaret, take Clara and go, Gideon said. This isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't, Margaret snapped, shocking Clara with her language. Clara's our teacher, and you're our neighbor. Anyone coming for you comes for us all. As night fell, Clara learned to use the Derringer pistol Gideon gave her. It's got 2 shots, he said, showing her how to hold it. Don't use them past 10 feet. Don't hesitate if someone gets close. This isn't about fairness, it's about surviving. Clara's hands shook as she practiced, but she focused. If Gideon was right, her life might depend on this gun. I never thought, she said quietly. When I got off that stage in Denver, I'd be learning to shoot outlaws, to protect my home. Second thoughts? Gideon asked, fear in his voice. Not of the fight, but that she might think he wasn't worth the trouble. Clara looked at their kitchen, where ranchers planned and women prepared bandages and bullets. She thought of the school bell, the kids who needed her, the life she and Gideon were building. No second thoughts, she said firmly. This is my home. These are my people. You're the man I love. We face this together. The attack came in the dark before dawn, when soldiers know it's hardest to think straight. Clara woke to gunfire and Gideon's urgent voice. They're here, he said, moving to the window with ease. Jake brought more men than we thought. Through the window, Clara saw muzzle flashes, heard bullets hit wood and stone. The ranchers had set up well, using cover and planned, spots to make it hard for attackers to get close. But there were too many, more than Gideon's 15 or 20. Gideon Lawson, a voice shouted through the gunfire. Jake Blackidge here. Been hunting you for 8 years, you traitor. Still alive, Jake? Gideon called back. Still disappointed about that. Not for long. You and your schoolteacher are gonna pay. Clara crouched by the window, derringer in both hands, watching Gideon shoot with calm skill. She realized her gentle giant was also a fighter who stayed cool in battle. The siege lasted all night with outlaws trying to rush the house, but getting pushed back by the ranchers. Gunfire. As dawn neared, Clara saw they'd hurt the attackers, but the valley had losses too. Tom Mitchell was shot, and young Bobby Hartwell took a bullet in the shoulder. They'll try one more time, Gideon said, reloading. Jake won't leave, empty-handed after losing so many. How many left? Clara asked. 8, maybe 10, he said. But they're desperate now, and desperate men are dangerous. Jake's voice rang out again. Gideon, no more games. Come out and face me man to man, or I'll burn every building in this valley. Clara saw Gideon's face harden. She knew he was about to do something brave and probably foolish. Don't even think it, she said firmly. We finish this together or not at all. Outside, Jake ordered his men for a final attack. The real fight was about to start. Dawn broke with a fiery red sky. Clara hid behind the flipped kitchen table, her derringer steady despite the chaos. Through the broken window, she saw Jake Blackidge leading his men in their last attack. He was rough, his face scarred from a hard life, his eyes cold like a killer. He moved like he'd never lost a fight, and Clara felt deep fear. There! Gideon shouted, firing both Colts at shadows moving in the dawn. Samuel, they're trying the barn! Clara heard Samuel's rifle from the creek, but his shots were wilder now. Gideon, Jake's voice cut through. End this. Come out or I start shooting windows till I hit something soft. A bullet smashed the window frame near Clara's head, sending splinters flying. She ducked lower, knowing her derringer had only 2 shots, 2 chances to matter in this deadly fight. How many left? She called to Gideon, who was behind the fireplace. 5 or 6, he said, focused. But Jake's worth 3 by himself, and he's got nothing to lose. More gunfire came, and bullets tore through the front door. Clara realized their defenses, strong at night, were falling, apart against men who fought to win or die. Clara! Margaret called from outside. The barn's burning! Through the smoke, Clara saw flames on the barn where Gideon kept horses and tools. The outlaws weren't just attacking. They wanted to destroy everything Gideon built. Bastards! Gideon growled, his face dark with anger. 8 years of work! Buildings can be fixed, Clara said, though her heart hurt watching the barn burn. We can't. A new sound came, fast hoofbeats from the south. Clara hoped for help, then saw Jake's smug smile and knew these riders weren't friends. Insurance, Jake shouted. Brought Colorado boys in case you valley folks were tough. 8 more outlaws rode in, their horses tired from a hard ride. Clara's hope faded. They couldn't beat these odds. That's it, Gideon said, checking his guns. We're not getting out of this. But then another sound hit, a deep, clear ring from the bronze school bell. Someone was ringing it, sending a help signal across the valley. "Danny," Clara whispered, realizing. Danny Hartwell, the 16-year-old she taught, was ringing the bell with all his strength, calling for aid. It was a long shot. Other towns were hours away, too far to help, but the bells spooked the outlaws. Some hesitated, looking nervous as the ringing continued. Men who lived by violence often feared symbols of the civilized world. "Stop that." "Noise!" Jake yelled. "It's just a kid!" The pause gave the ranchers time to move. Clara heard Samuel's rifle from a new spot, and a Colorado outlaw fell. Then Jake appeared at their broken front door, gun ready, face full of 8 years of rage. "Time to settle, old friend," he said, eyes on Gideon. Clara saw Gideon reach for his Colts, saw the deadly focus in both men. But she also saw something Jake missed, an outlaw moving through the smoke toward the window where she hid, his rifle aimed at Gideon's back. Clara raised her derringer, remembering Gideon's words. "Don't hesitate if someone's that close." The outlaw was less than 10 feet away, his eyes cold as he aimed at Gideon. Clara fired. The derringer's small sound was lost in the gunfire, but the outlaw staggered, his shot missing, his rifle falling as he grabbed his shoulder. At the same moment, Gideon and Jake drew, two killers moving with deadly skill. Clara watched, frozen, as they aimed, the final showdown coming like thunder. After lightning, the school bell kept ringing, its sound like a prayer, a promise, a stand against chaos. The gunshots came so fast they sounded like one loud crack. Clara watched in terror as Gideon and Jake fired together, guns steady, faces locked in focus. For a moment, both stood still, weapons out. Then Jake's knees gave, and he fell face down, his gun sliding across the floor. Gideon stayed up but bled from his side, leaning slightly. He'd been hit, but was alive. "Clara," he said, voice rough but steady. "You okay?" Before she could answer, the outlaws outside shouted, confused and panicked. Their leader was dead, the fight was failing, and the bell kept ringing, calling the territory to see their loss. "Jake's dead," one yelled. "What now?" "Get out of here," another said. "This valley's crazy." Clara watched the outlaws retreat, grabbing their wounded and dead, their attack falling apart. Samuel appeared in the doorway, rifle ready, face grim. "How bad?" he asked, seeing Gideon's blood. "I'll live," Gideon said, hiding his pain. "Jake's done." "Good shooting, both of you," Samuel said. "Clara saved you, dropping that guy aiming at your back." Clara looked at her derringer, smoke curling from it. She'd shot a man, maybe killed him, and felt oddly detached. Later, she'd feel the weight, for now she was glad Gideon was alive, and the fight was over. "The others?" Gideon asked. "Running scared," Samuel said, satisfied. "Lost. Their fight when Jake went down. Won't be back." Margaret rushed in with medical supplies, tending Gideon's wound like a pro. "Not as bad as it looks," she said. "Bullet went through clean, missed anything important. You'll be sore, but fine." Over the next hour, as smoke cleared, Clara saw the damage. The barn was gone, the house hurt but fixable, and neighbors were wounded but alive. The threat that haunted the valley for 8 years was gone. "Danny," Clara called, seeing the teen approach from the bell. "You hurt?" "No, ma'am," Danny said, excited but scared. "Glad that bell worked like you said." "Someone heard?" Clara said, hugging him. "You may have saved us all." As the day went on, more neighbors arrived, drawn by the bell. They found a community tested by violence but unbroken, people who stood together and won. That evening, as Clara helped Gideon eat soup, he took her hand. "I need to ask," he said, tired but serious. "You sorry about this? About what my past brought?" Clara looked at their scarred home. Outside, neighbors cleaned up, planning a new barn raising. The school bell sat untouched, ready for the new term. "I'm sorry people got hurt," she said. "Sorry we lost the barn, that neighbors risked their lives. But sorry I chose you? Never. Knowing your past, Gideon, I fell for who you are now. Today proved you're worth fighting for." She squeezed his hand. "Besides, I shot a man today. Guess I'm an outlaw, too." Gideon smiled despite his pain. Makes you a woman who protects what's hers. 2 days later, as Gideon sat up, Samuel brought news. Word from the marshal. Jake Blackidge had a $5,000 bounty, dead or alive. His gang had bounties too, about $8,000 total. We don't want blood money, Gideon said. Wasn't planning to keep it, Samuel grinned. We'll use it to rebuild. New barn, house repairs, maybe a real schoolhouse for Clara. Clara's eyes teared up. These people risked everything for them and now wanted to rebuild stronger. 3 weeks later, on a crisp October morning with golden leaves, Clara and Gideon stood by their scarred foundation stones, not for damage, but to get married. The whole valley came, plus folks from nearby towns who'd heard of the teacher, and reformed outlaw who found love. Reverend Morrison led the ceremony, his voice clear. Do you, Gideon Lawson, take Clara to be your wife, to have and hold in sickness and health for richer or poorer, as long as you both live? I do, Gideon said, strong despite his wound. And do you, Clara Whitmore, take Gideon to be your husband, to have and hold in sickness and health for richer or poorer, as long as you both live? Clara looked at the man who saved her from a storm, taught her to shoot, and showed her how to build something lasting. I do, she said, her voice ringing like the school bell. When they were named husband and wife, the party lasted all night, dancing, feasting, and toasts. Clara's favorite moment was near midnight, standing with Gideon by their foundation, stones, scarred but strong, ready for whatever they built next. No regrets? Gideon asked, holding her close. Only one, Clara said, snuggling into him. I wish my parents could have met you. They'd love who you've become. Stars shone above, and a coyote called across their wilderness home. A year later, Clara stood in their rebuilt home, watching Gideon finish a baby's cradle with the same care as her school bell. Each curve was made with love for their child, due in spring. Clara marveled at how far they'd come since that. Stormy night. The valley had grown since the gunfight. The new barn was bigger, better, built with help from neighbors. The schoolhouse, with glass windows and a bell tower, stood at the settlement's heart, its bell calling kids each morning. Mrs. Lawson, a small voice called. Ready for us? Clara smiled at her new title, opening the door to her afternoon. Reading group, 8 kids with books and slates eager to learn. Come in, she said, leading them to the teaching room. Danny, did you finish the Dickens chapter? Yes, ma'am, the 17-year-old said, now helping teach younger kids. But I had questions about some words. Great. Questions mean you're thinking, Clara said, settling into her teaching chair, loving how home and school mixed. As the kids worked, Clara saw Gideon listening from his workshop, smiling at smart answers. He'd joined the teaching without planning, his practical know-how pairing with her book smarts. Mr. Gideon, 6-year-old Emma Mitchell asked, how do you make wood so smooth? Same as learning to read without tripping, Gideon said, setting down his tool. Practice, patience, and listening to what the wood teaches you. The lesson went on, covering math, geography, and big ideas from books. Clara watched her growing students, feeling pride beyond work. These kids were growing in a place that valued learning for all, not just the rich. They'd be thoughtful, able to dream beyond just surviving. When the kids left, Clara and Gideon were alone. He'd finished the cradle, testing its rocking. It's beautiful, Clara said, touching the carved initials and vines. Our child will love it. Our children, Gideon corrected, smiling. This is built for generations. Clara laughed, picturing a house full of kids learning from both of them. Gideon, she said, sitting by his workbench, do you think about how things might have been if that storm hadn't trapped us? Every day, he said seriously. But I don't linger. Thinking about what if can drive you nuts. I wasn't trapped, Clara said softly. I was saved. That evening, on their porch, watching the sunset, Clara thought about her journey. She came west to teach. Now a wife, soon a mom, and a key part of a community shaping the future. Read to me? She asked, handing Gideon David Copperfield. His reading was smooth now, his deep voice bringing the story to life. As he read, Clara felt their baby move, eager for a world of stories, learning, and love woven together. When he finished, Clara placed his hand on her belly. "Feel that?" she asked as the baby kicked. "Strong one," Gideon said, amazed. "A fighter like his mom." "Or her dad," Clara said. "This baby will grow up knowing love, protection, and learning. What more could we want?" Stars appeared above, and the school bell caught the last sunlight. Tomorrow, it would ring. Again calling kids to learn, calling the community to build something lasting. Clara Lawson, no longer the unsure teacher from Denver, closed her eyes, listening to the wind, the cattle, and Gideon's steady breathing. The man who promised a ranch and gave her a world. Sometimes, the best shelter really comes from the strangest stranger. And sometimes, if you trust the storm, it takes you right where you belong.